Back in the kitchen today, and we're with Catherine from Odlums, and we're cooking traditional Irish recipes again. What have you got for us right now?
Today we're going to do some Boxty. Now, Boxty is very traditional, but depending on the part of Ireland you're from, depends on the recipe you use.
Okay.
There's a Donegal Boxty and there's a Leyden Boxty.
Yep.
And in certain parts of the Midlands of Ireland, they've never heard of Boxty.
Right.
So, anything.
Potato is the common ingredient, obviously.
Potato is the main ingredient in it, of course. And this goes way, way back. This is a very, very traditional recipe.
Right.
Now I'm going to start with the more difficult of the two, which is the Leyden Boxty.
Okay.
Boxty. And the Leyden Boxty uses both cold mashed potato, leftover cold mashed potato, and I have 125 grams, 4 ounces there of cold mashed potato. And here I have 125 grams, 4 ounces of grated potato.
Right.
Now, with the Leyden Boxty, you put the grated potato into a clean tea towel and you squeeze it and you remove the starch. So I'll get you to do that now, Niall.
Very important sort of step this, because I mean there's so much water content in there. If I squeeze these, and
but funnily enough, Niall, as you see with the Donegal Boxty, they don't squeeze it at all.
Right.
Which is interesting. Squeeze out the starch, and then we're going to add to the potatoes the 125 grams, 4 ounces of flour. See wow, there's a fair amount of liquid coming out of that, isn't there?
Yeah, and I mean if you leave that in there with this version, because it's a little bit wetter, what's going to happen is it'll just stick because there's so much water content, and it'll be very sort of runny, you know?
Exactly, it's a very tricky one. So now, in there we have the flour, the cooked mashed potato, and now you're going to add the grated. Wow, look at that,
Nice
huge difference, very dry.
And you don't want to be
Wonderful.
hanging around with that grated potato because it'll
No,
go black,
exactly,
obviously.
it'll go black in no time on us. Now, the other thing is a good pinch of salt. And salt, of course, is very traditionally Irish.
Yep.
Plenty of salt in it. To that then we're going to add a teaspoonful of baking powder, which we have here. This gives a lightness to the Boxty.
So the idea of a Boxty is essentially that it's a potato pancake, I guess.
Absolutely a potato pancake, exactly.
Yeah.
Now what I've done there, I have an egg here and I've just added to the beaten egg some milk.
Right.
Now I'm not saying how much milk now, because that really depends on how much moisture you have extracted from your potatoes.
Yeah.
So the amount of milk you add can vary.
Well, it's
so
very
now
much the same as, I always say, if you're making pancakes, for example,
Yes.
you don't really have a recipe. You know, you play around with it.
Exactly. Add a little more, a little less.
Because you get bigger or smaller eggs, you get, you know, wetter potatoes.
Absolutely, things vary.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just going to add a small little bit more milk into that.
Yep.
And have it to a nice dropping consistency.
Yeah.
And then you drop spoonfuls of that onto the pan to cook.
Now, Boxty's sweet, savoury.
Either, it can be used either, but it's generally used as a breakfast. You know,
Right,
have it with a wholesome breakfast.
We're actually going to
What are you
cook a
gonna do?
few toppings with it afterwards. So
Fantastic.
What I'm going to do is cook this one. And if you move on to the second one, which is the
Donegal Boxty, the simpler one. Now
Yeah.
you have the Leyden Boxty there.
Yeah.
We're now going to make up the simpler one.
And I'm just going to explain for cooking this. Oil, hot pan. You want a decent temperature in there because the mixture is quite sort of liquidy, so you want it to sort of sear and get a nice brown on the outside. Also, a little knob of butter.
Okay, so now while you're heating the oil and the butter, I'm going to put together the Donegal Boxty, which is just 125 grams of flour, 125 grams, 4 ounces, and we've just made it by the skin of our teeth there of the mashed potato.
Yeah.
And to that we add again the egg and the good pinch of salt. Have we got our salt here? No, that's your milk. This is my salt, thank you. Good pinch of salt.
Now you can see that butter starting to froth up. That's exactly what you want. Butter's going to help it sort of brown up, and it's going to give it that nice sort of nutty flavour as well that you get.
Oh yes, lovely.
So a generous spoonful.
Like pancakes really, aren't they?
They are indeed.
Like crumpets.
Yeah, exactly.
Only shaped like crumpet, but not at all taste like crumpet.
And I think they're sort of born out of necessity. I think like they're obviously quite an old dish. There was nothing around
They
apart
went
from
right
potatoes.
back. Yes, yeah.
So people had to
And
get
there were
together.
hard times as well, and that could be why the Leyden one used up the leftover cold potatoes.
Exactly, yeah.
Didn't waste anything in those days.
Yeah.
Now these look lovely
Now
here.
you can see a little bit of golden brown. That's exactly what you're looking for.
Wow.
Flip them over, and that is absolutely
Oh,
perfect.
fantastic now.
Now what you'll find with these is, I find if I eat pancakes or something like that,
Oh,
I
that's
probably wouldn't be, I'd be hungry in a couple of hours. You look at that, it's full of potato, there's lots of starch in there, lovely little topping,
That looks wonderful.
gorgeous. So we're just going to fry those again for about 2 minutes on that side till they get golden brown. I might actually pop them into the oven because you can see they're quite thick.
They are quite thick, yes.
So I'll pop them into the oven for about 5 minutes, and then we'll do the same with that mixture, and then we'll be able to make some lovely toppings.
Fantastic.
Right, so just pop those into the oven, keeping them warm basically while we finish up the second one, which is the
Donegal Boxty. Now this won't have the same substance at all now.
Yeah, a little
because
flatter.
much flatter, and because there's no cooked potato in them.
Right.
Right? So there's less volume in them. But equally tasty, but a different type of taste, different type of texture.
And probably
so
a lot quicker as well.
a lot quicker, exactly.
So same process again. Now this is the very, very important part. Oil, butter, and you're creating a little emulsion there, which is why you get that lovely brown golden
golden
colour.
brown, oh yeah, the others look wonderful.
So as soon as that starts to melt, and then this is going to be a little bit sort of
Flatter.
and
More like a type of rosti, really, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I've seen that some people make boxies like literally the whole size of the pan.
That's
yeah?
right, yes.
So I just like to keep them. They look a bit nicer when they're that size, I think. Just
Well,
like
they look more rustic and more artisan when you're serving them, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
When you have them like that, yeah.
So they're not going
So what are we going to serve with them today now, did you say?
I'm going to cook up a little bit of, very simple, I think they're just so delicious and tasty, smoked salmon and a little bit of scrambled eggs. I'm going to show you how to make a perfect scrambled eggs. Cause I think
A lot of people can't make scrambled eggs.
How many people ask
best
you?
I've ever heard. I'm asked all the time,
Yeah.
how do you make a scrambled egg?
Yeah.
So will I start on the eggs for you?
You can, if you just want to crack them up with just a little bit of seasoning in there, a little bit of salt.
Okay. How's the Donegal Boxty doing? See, it's much flatter. Doesn't have the volume. Again, because of the absence of the baking powder as well,
Exactly.
of course.
And
Yeah.
you know the mistake that most people make? They start flipping it all the time. Just see the way we haven't touched it hardly for the first minute,
Well,
right?
you're very laid back now, I have to say.
Now you flip them
I
over.
could check. Oh, fabulous.
Perfect.
Again, lovely.
And just be patient, just leave it. And now you can sort of turn it down to a nice low controlled heat and there's nothing really to worry about. So you can see, right, there's enough heat left in that pan on the other side to cook that out. So what I'm
Even
going
though
to do,
you've turned it off now, have you?
even though it's off, it's 100% off, the pan is so hot that you don't want it to overcook. And I'm going to move on to the scrambled eggs. Right?
No, isn't it important that you don't overbeat the eggs? Isn't that important for scrambled eggs?
Absolutely.
I've seen people take out electric mixers for this job.
I know,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. So, because it's a little bit luxurious and we're trying to make it sort of nice and rich and creamy.
Very important, yes.
Butter and cream. And what I'm doing is I'm making a little emulsion here.
Oh, lovely, yeah.
So you can see that bubbling up and you want it to sort of come together. And,
So in there we have what now? You've got the cream and the butter. What
Cream-
about
cream and
2
butter.
ounces of butter? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So just
And about 2 or 3 tablespoons of cream.
exactly, just making a little emulsion. So once that starts to come together, I'll grab those eggs off you.
And there we are. Now just put a good pinch of salt and the 4 eggs.
Absolutely.
That's all right.
Now if you want to just grab me a spatula or a wooden spoon.
We have that here now for you.
Now, a lot of people make the mistake, you see them making scrambled eggs with a whisk, right? Or
That's like the electric mixer, yeah.
Yeah.
The whisk comes out, yes.
or they go in here with a whisk. Now, a whisk
That's
is,
right, yeah.
is not entirely correct. I love using a spatula because you'll see towards the end the consistency that they come together. Absolutely perfect. You know the way when you get scrambled eggs and they're like sawdust.
Oh,
and they're
desperate, yes.
horrible.
Now, what heat have you got that under? Medium or hot?
I tell you what, it's actually a medium heat, and now what you'll see is the way that's starting to come together, right? At the
Yes,
very
I do.
start. What I do is I pull it off the heat for a few seconds because there's loads of heat in there, right? So
Of course, the saucepan retains, all metal retains heat, yes.
So they're still cooking, so it's not on the heat. And then once it stops cooking, I'll pull it back on for
Lovely.
another sort of 30 seconds. Right, so that's nearly starting to cook there. Pull them back on.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to maybe grab those other Leyden boxties.
Yes, out of the oven, I will certainly, yes.
Perfect.
Now you've
They've
got fish
popped
thighs
up really
there.
nicely, haven't they?
They're beautiful, aren't they? Look at that.
Now, a couple of plates.
So you've taken the egg off, by the way.
I have.
Off the heat again, yes.
It's not quite cooked, but there's enough heat in there to finish it off. We'll
Yeah,
finish
see
that
that?
in a little second.
Oh, lovely. That's lovely and creamy. And still bubbling now, even though it's off the heat.
Exactly, yeah, so it's pretty much there. So there goes our 2 boxes. Now one I'm going to serve very simply with a little bit of smoked salmon. Now you could just see yourself making this as a treat at the weekend for brunch or something
Wonderful
like that,
brunch,
couldn't you?
yes.
The second one, we're going to go with a little bit of smoked salmon and just a tiny little bit, seeing as it is an Irish dish, I'm going to get a bit of a tricolour colour going on there.
Oh, fabulous. Red, white and green,
A
yes.
little bit of the rocket. And our look at the scrambled eggs, so simple and quick. And we're just going to, a little bit up on top there. And I think you'll agree that's a gorgeous brunch dish, isn't it?
Absolutely. And very much on the healthy theme too now. I know there's salt in it, which people have mixed views about, but I mean, there's something very fattening in that. As
No,
such, there isn't.
absolutely not. Very
A
simple.
very healthy brunch.
Thanks a million for sharing your Boxty recipe
Not
with
at
us.
all, you're very welcome.